Welcome to Tech Time Live. I'm Jacob from the Tech Services team at BEA, and we have Rob Rivera moderating the chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. So the point of this training today is to teach you how to set up the FALCON via our universal handheld remote. So this is the sensor here. The FALCON is a motion sensor. It works via Doppler radar technology or microwave. That being said, you have to be moving either towards it or away from it for it to work. It's not to be used for safety, so you can't just stand in the field motionless for it to work. It's not a presence sensor. Now, its main priority is door activation, but it can also be used to turn on and off LED lights. I actually have an example behind me so that you can see the activation better, but we're going to get into that. If you're going to use it with LEDs, a good thing to do would be to use it with a relay like a BR3X. Also, the sensor is NEMA 4 rated, so it is rated for outdoor use. So after the brief introduction, here are the 4 different types that we have. We have BEA part numbers 10 Falcon, 10 Falcon Wide, 10 Falcon XL, and 10 Falcon EX. The first 3 are based on mounting height. So the regular Falcon can go 11.5 to 23 feet, while the XL can go 6.5 feet to 11.5 feet. So XL actually stands for extra low, not extra large. The Falcon Wide is basically the regular Falcon, but the field is wider and it goes from 11.5 feet to 21 feet high. Some common places are applications like warehouses, cold storage rooms, garage doors, roll-up doors, and much more. The Falcon EX is for places that need to be intrinsically safe. I don't really have an example to show today, but it could be somewhere like a munitions facility or places with chemicals or wood shavings in the air. The sensor is housed in an explosion-proof casing that prevents a fire from occurring if there's a spark due to it or the wiring. And speaking of wiring, it's our next step right here. So what I have in my hand here is the BR3X. This is that relay I was talking about if you want to integrate it with a LED. So just typical BEA wiring, you can see right here, red and black. Red is positive for power, black is negative for power. The sensor could take anywhere from 12 to 24 volts AC or DC, anything within that range. It cannot take 110 volts. A good power supply would be something like an Altronics power supply, door controls 12 to 24 volts, or even a simple transformer. The rest of the wires we have here are for activation. So you see white and green over here. White is common, green is normally open. And we have a yellow, which is normally closed for the wiring. We usually use white and green, normally open. Depending on the door that you're using, the wiring is probably going to be different per door control. We do have some wiring diagrams on our website at beasensors.com. You can find some wiring instructions there. So one of the more common Falcon calls that we get is actually from electricians wiring white and red for power because they think that the white is actually common for power. Well, actually, it's like a breaker box in your house. There's a hot, neutral, or even a ground. The white for our sensors is common for activation, not for power. So red and black, as you can see in the 12 to 24 volt slot, is actually power for the sensor and its LEDs. So we've gone over the wiring. Sensor's powered up. You can confirm by pressing unlock on the remote, and we're actually going to do a little brief introduction of the remote right now. So here's the 10 remote. This is what we use for programming a majority of our sensors. If you don't have a remote, the Falcon can be programmed via 2 push buttons. This is one of them and one right here. They're actually not mounting screws or nothing that keeps the thing held in place. They're just push buttons if you don't have the remote. If you don't have the remote and you want to program it that way, our user's guide definitely has something on there that can help you out with the programming. We're also going to have an upcoming Tech Time Live on the remote so you can get a little bit used to it. And if there's enough interest, we could even show a Tech Time Live on the BR3X too. So 10 remote. This is what we program everything with. Several things you can program on the Falcon, which are things like the field size, sometimes called sensitivity, detection filter, sometimes called rejection mode, directionality. We're going to go into each aspect. So before we get into that, a little bit about the field. So the field for a microwave sensor, think of it as a flashlight. When you have it above your hand like this, there's a small circle on your hand. The higher you raise it, the bigger that circle is going to get. That's basically how the FALCON works. So along with that, the angling is also a big factor in it too. So if you angle it lower, more closer to the door, it's going to be a smaller field. But if you angle it further, you're going to reach out further away. So the first thing you program on the sensor is field size. If you look right here, 2 above the blue, that little ramp symbol, that's the field size. So to unlock the sensor, you'll see we have here an unlock symbol. Once you unlock, you see a red blinking light on there. It's going to be a slow, steady, red blinking light. For whatever program that you're going to program into it, let's say ramp, for example, for field size, you press that next. You can see that the red flashing has gone extraordinarily faster. We have all the numbers on top. The higher the number for field size, the further it's going to go. Default is 7. Let's try setting it to 1. 1, once you hit a value, it slows down. End your session with lock, lock. The reason you have to hit lock twice is if you do not, it's going to program an access code into the sensor accidentally, because you can. If you have 2 sensors, let's say there was one on the right, one on the left, and this is an industrial door. If you put an access code on one, it's not going to unlock both sensors and program both at the same time. You have to put in that code manually in order to set it up. So we set it to 1. I'm going to move the camera back a little bit so that you can actually see the difference in the field size. I have that green LED set up so that you can see when it detects me. All right, there we go. You should still be able to see the LED right at the corner of that door. So when I walk up to it, green LED. Let's see how close it gets. So for pedestrian traffic, I'm probably about 4 feet away from the door, 3 feet. So let's do unlock, ramp, 7, back to default, lock, lock. So for reference, I'm about right here. Let's see how closer to the camera that I have to be. 2 steps. So the ramp takes the field in towards the door or further from the door, and along with the tilt angle of your sensor. It goes from 0 to 9, and based on the application is what you'd set it to. So up next, we have hold open time. It's that clock symbol on the remote. So basically, hold open time is from the time I enter this field and I step out, that's how long it holds open for. At default, it's set to half a second. But what happens if we set it to 4? Unlock, clock, 4, lock, lock. Now when I step in, the moment I step out, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the LED on the sensor went out. It's attached to a BR3X, so it has a teeny bit more hold time on that light. But the moment I step in, when I step out of that field, the sensor is going to hold open for as long as you set it for. You can set it up to 9 seconds, but at default, we have it at half second. Unlock, clock, 0, lock, lock. So when I move up to it, as soon as I walk out, holds for half second, drops out. Next on the list is the directionality, that double-sided arrow. So the sensor, in a typical application, we have it set for vehicles only and cross-traffic rejection. Now I'm going to set it to all 3 settings for the directionality that we have for, but I just want you to make one note. At default, I say there's cross-traffic rejection, but at default, there is none until you set it up to be that way. The reason for this is being, as a human, we're not walking straight in a line parallel with that door. We're swaying, our arms are moving, you're slightly moving towards the motion sensor, which, as the nature of it goes, it's going to detect anything going towards it. So let's see what number 1 is. Unlock, directional arrow, 1, lock, lock. So it sees me going towards it, and it sees me going away from it. This is called bidirectional. It sees you going 2 different directions. Unlock, directional arrows, 2, lock, lock. Sensor sees me going towards it, does not see me going away from it. That's unidirectional towards, and that's typical. Unlock, arrow, 3, lock, lock. You'll notice it did not see me going towards it, but away from it. That's unidirectional away. When an application you'd use this on is if you do not have enough room to mount it on the, and it's center mount only on doors, by the way. You don't have enough room to mount it on the door, so you mount it to a wall away from the door. So it detects everything going in towards the door, but away from the sensor. And for presentation purposes, we're going to set it back to default, which is unidirectional towards the sensor. Now, what I think the most important aspect to learn about here is detection filter, or as some people call it, rejection mode. This symbol right here, one above the red, we call that the shaky box. It goes anywhere from 1 to 6. 1 and 2 are people activation. 2 has a little bit of an immunity. 3 to 6 is vehicles only. Now, when I say immunity, any motion sensor gets affected by things like spinning fans, reflection, vibration, fluorescent lights, things of that nature. You can filter that out with this button, as well as get cross-traffic rejection and people rejection. So I have it at the minimum height, which is 11.5 feet. One note I do want you to take from this presentation is do not go below or above the recommended mounting height. That's why we have a 10 Falcon and a 10 Falcon XL. The 10 Falcon at 11.5 feet, if you go any lower, pedestrian rejection is not going to work anymore. Same with the XL. If you go any lower or higher, it's going to start to see anything or not see anything at all. So you want to stay within that barrier. So at default, it's set to 1, detection of anything. If we hit unlock, shaky box, 2, lock, lock, it's going to see me. But it still has that immunity now if there was vibration. At the minimum is 3, unlock, shaky box, 3, lock, lock. Now, being how low I have this mounted, it's still going to see me probably up to 4 or 5 because I'm just at the minimum. 5 and 6 is the best thing you could set it to at 11.5 feet. So I'll walk up, and it did see me. Unlock, shaky box, 4, lock, lock. So if it still sees you as you're walk testing this thing, just keep increasing the number up towards 6. There we go. I tripped it at number 4. And you want to do a couple walk tests. Don't just do one and think it's going to work the whole time. You want to do a couple walk tests, maybe 10 to be safe. Unlock, shaky box, 5, lock, lock. Now this is where it's going to start not seeing me. Do a couple walk tests. That one was a little better. Let's try unlock, shaky box, 6, lock, lock. So now, after we set up this Falcon, it's set to not see me. So I'll walk up. Sensor didn't see me. Sensor didn't see me again. So at the minimum height, 5 or 6 is what you want to go with. And I would do just a few testings. Test it with a car once you're done. Test it with walking. Make sure it doesn't see you. And once you do your risk assessment test, everything works out. Pack your bags, move to the next job site, or go home, whatever's next. If you want any additional information, you can find anything on our website at beasensors.com. You'll find webinars, you'll find upcoming Tech Time Lives coming up soon on the Facebook page. Be ready for some trainings. If you have any requests, do feel free to send them in. That's all I got. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
So far, we just had one question, but that was taken care of. I just put out if anybody has any more questions, and we're giving them a minute to see if anybody does.
Sounds good.
Looks like, oh, hold on a second. John Franco, will you be doing this on the LZR? Maybe you have some input on some of our upcoming potential.
Yeah, so we definitely, and I'm guessing you mean the wide scan, but we are going to be doing a lot more Tech Time Lives on the LZRs, and send in your requests. If there's anything you want us to do a Tech Time Live on, please tell us. LZR, perfect. We'll get it done.
Jeff Dunham wants to know if this can be used as a safety sensor.
No, it cannot be used as a safety sensor because it's motion only. If you stand in the field, it's not going to see you because it's not a present sensor.
And I would throw the question out there as well that you have that BR3. You yourself actually mentioned that BR3 is very useful if you were using the sensor on one side of the door to open the door, but also as for a light on the other side of the door, some type of integration for that. Maybe you can elaborate.
Oh, sure. So a typical application that you see a Falcon with an LED on is let's say you're at a cold storage facility, and on one side you have forklift traffic going through, but on the other side, if you're walking in that area, you want that LED to see you. So that LED will turn on when it sees you and tell the forklift to stop moving, or vice versa. So that's a pretty common application there. It's really to alarm another person that you're on the other side and to stop until that LED comes off. And it's not just the Falcon. It could be the IS-40 wide scan.
And we got a question about mounting brackets for this.
Yes, so we have two mounting brackets for our industrial sensors. We have a 10 mini bracket and a 10 IND bracket. The mini bracket goes out about 12 inches and the industrial bracket goes out about 36. So if there's anything on that door that you need the sensor to see past, just use a bracket, extend it out a bit.
One other question, can this sensor be mounted on the side of the door?
You do not want to mount it on the side of the door because it has to be straight on traffic. It's a cross traffic rejecting sensor. So if you put it on the side and so here's your door, you're going from the side, you're now being detected as cross traffic. You might be able to trip it coming from a tiny bit of an angle, but if you're coming from the side or 45 degrees, you want to avoid doing that as much as possible.
And now
temperature is about 121 degrees is the max that it goes up to, right around there.
And what if you accidentally enter a lock code or somebody else enters a lock code?
So if someone else enters a lock code and you don't know what it is, you can recycle the power. So once you turn off the power, turn it on, you have 1 minute of programming on that sensor. So what you want to do is hit unlock, hit the lock button 1 time, 0 4 times, unlock, lock, 0 0 0 0. And that'll take off your access code.
And the temperature rating on this is -22 at its lowest to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Both of those are Fahrenheit, just to let everybody know that question was asked. Now, another one is, could the Falcon and the BR3 be used to delay the opening? Falcon trips a warning light and then a couple seconds later the door opens.
Sure. So we have several different functions on the BR3, and if we can make a Tech Time Live on each function if needed. So let's just say you're using function 28. Relay 1 can activate that light. You'll set a delay between relay 1 and 2 for however long you need it to. So Falcon trips, LED comes on, 2 seconds later, door comes open. Now another thing, I think I read this on the comments coming through. The Falcon does not close the door. The Falcon is just used to activate it. There has to be a timer to close or some function in your control to let the door come closed.
Yeah, so that was that. Let's see. Can I use the Falcon to open and close a door? Yes. Well, yeah, you may want to elaborate on that. What to open?
That's what I was just talking about.
Okay.
You have to have, the Falcon does not close the door. It just opens it. You have to have a timer to close.
Okay. I was asked originally at the very beginning if this sensor could be used on a access control burg or intrusion system, and if so, do we have schematics for that? Why don't you elaborate on that, Jake?
So any schematics that you want to look for that we might have on the Falcon, you can go to the website and find them. So it doesn't just have to be the Falcon. It can be IS-40 door, regular pedestrian door sensors, industrial door sensors, LZRs, doesn't matter.
Does the Falcon detect a stopped person or vehicle?
No, you cannot sit in the field motionless to be detected. It's a motion sensor, so you have to be going towards it or away from it.
John Franco asked, could the BR3 timer close? Close the door. I imagine that's, and I, just to give you some insight, I have utilized a system like that where you put a delay between relay 1 and relay 2. Relay 1 would open the door, 30 seconds later relay 2 would fire and close the door on a input in, input out. That's very specific things. There are a lot of safety requirements that have to be met to do something like that.
Right.
And Joe's asking, can I turn on a warning light and open the door? Oh, we did cover that, Joe. Yeah, that was that can be done. And also here's one. Why does the flat scan and the Eagle one fight against the other when used together? So why are they interfering with each other? We use microwave technology next to each other pretty consistently, but
right.
that is a tough question. But I think that we use usually in Falcon is used because the environmental conditions, it's industrial, because the height, because the area, and we use them next to each other all the time, and it is used successfully all the time.
I agree.
Any other questions, gentlemen and ladies? Anyone? I think we're good here.
What's the power requirements? 12 to 24 volts AC or DC, anything in between.
Can I use to replace a loop? It's this is a motion sensor. In some cases, it could be used to take up a loop. If you were going to use it in place of a loop, there are some conditions that would be conditionally. You'd have to really look at it and see your application. But I think Jonathan says it's time to close it out, Jake.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming. We really do appreciate your participation and watching this presentation. Hope you got the most out of it. Like I said, if you need anything else or if you have any more recommendations, please do feel free to contact any one of us.